Okay, let's try and unpack this because honestly, when I first got the research for this deep dive, I thought I thought there was a mistake in the files.
I had the same reaction.
I mean, we're usually here tackling these huge, complex sociopolitical trends, or, we're digging into deep history or the ethics of AI. It's always these heavy, human-centric topics.
Right.
And today, I opened the file and I'm looking at research from a farm in Ashley County. And more specifically, I'm looking at a dossier where the main subject is a rooster named the General.
It does sound a bit distinct from our usual fare, doesn't it? It feels like a hard left turn into something else entirely.
It really does.
You see farm animal, and your brain immediately goes to, what, a children's book? Or maybe a local interest piece for the county newsletter.
Exactly. A quirky little story, but that's not what this is.
No, not at all. Because once you start peeling back the layers of this, once you read the observational laws, the behavioral notes, the structural analysis of the farm itself,
Yeah.
you realize this isn't really a story about a chicken. It's a story about systems. It is a masterclass in leadership dynamics, the incredible power of narrative to just override objective reality, and, maybe most importantly, what happens when you introduce a radical new software into hardware that was never, ever designed to run it.
Right. I love that analogy. We are essentially looking at a case study of a bird, a biological organism that's operating on, millions of years of instinct that accidentally undergoes this radical psychological transformation.
A total rewrite of its operating system.
And the catalyst for this whole thing, it wasn't a genetic mutation. It wasn't some special feed. It was a looped playlist of financial affirmations and self-help gurus, guys like Bob Proctor and Jack Canfield.
Which is just such a fascinating, completely bizarre premise. You've got the general, this creature of pure instinct, suddenly being bombarded with this high-level conceptual programming meant for, a 45-year-old sales manager in a midwinter slump.
Exactly.
We're talking about concepts like wealth, abundance, legacy, corporate dominance, words that mean nothing to him.
And the result isn't that the bird understands English. It's not like he starts trading stocks on his phone.
No, of course not. It's that the bird reinterprets those signals, those energetic patterns of the words, into a completely new operating system for the entire farm. He builds a new reality from the scraps of a language he doesn't understand.
So before we get to the self-help rooster and his law of attraction, let's really set the stage here. Because the environment plays a huge role in this entire story.
It's critical.
The source material describes the setting in January, Ashley County. And this is not some pastoral, idyllic paradise. It's described as weather that arrives sideways.
That's such an evocative description. And there's another line that really stuck with me, cold without ceremony.
Yes.
It just paints this picture of a place that is completely indifferent to your comfort. It's not dramatic. It's just punishingly present.
Light that showed up late and left early. I love that one. And mud remembered being liquid but refused to cooperate. It just paints this picture of a harsh, rigid, unchanging environment.
And that rigidity is absolutely key to understanding what happens later. The farm is described as a system of routines and tolerances. You have the feed schedules, the water lines, the fences. It's a machine.
But there's also this industrial backdrop that the source keeps mentioning, and it's crucial. The text talks about the low industrial hum from the paper mill, 60 hertz.
Constant.
A baseline frequency for their entire world.
That hum is almost like the baseline reality, isn't it? It's just always there. The sound of the world working.
Precisely. It's the infrastructure of their reality.
Yes.
That 60 hertz hum tells the yard what time it is on a subconscious level. It's the sound of systems doing what systems do. It's a constant reminder that this isn't a nature preserve. It's an interface between biology and industry.
And into this very structured, very physical, very cold reality, we introduce a new variable.
A playlist.
The playlist. But before we hit play on that, let's just quickly meet the players. We have the general, obviously, who's our protagonist. The rooster, who goes from, basic survival instincts to what we can only call CEO delusions. He stops being a participant in the flock and starts viewing himself as the executive director of it.
Then there's Rick, the owner, the man with the speakers.
Rick is the enabler. He's the one who justifies all these bizarre changes as efficiency, even when they're clearly driven by something far stranger. He's the human interface for the general's ambition.
He wants to believe it's working.
He wants to believe the farm is optimizing itself, so he rationalizes the madness. He sees order emerging and thinks, great, my system is working, without questioning the source of that order.
Okay, then we have JD.
JD is the skeptic. He's the voice of grounded reality, the pragmatist. He's the one looking at the ground, the fences, the feed costs. He sees the structural stress that all these new narratives are causing.
So if Rick is the visionary CEO looking at the clouds,
JD is the terrified structural engineer looking at the cracking foundation saying, this is not sustainable.
and finally, John,
June is the modern observer, the lens of the outside world. She sees the farm not as a system of agriculture, but through the lens of content and algorithms. She doesn't see a bird. She sees engagement metrics.
she represents how the outside world eventually views this whole strange experiment as entertainment.
Exactly.
Okay, so let's get to the inciting incident, the catalyst, the playlist incident. Rick, the owner, decides to install weatherproof speakers around the coop. Why? What was the actual logic there?
Well, the source says he wanted to, and this is his phrase, clean up the sound profile.
Clean up the sound profile of a chicken coop.
I know, it's a very
Yeah,
corporate way to put it, but he felt the deep silence of winter didn't sit right. Or maybe that 60 hertz hum from the mill was just too depressing, too monotonous. He wanted sound as insulation against the winter blues.
so he was trying to hack his own seasonal depression.
And the chicken got caught in the crossfire.
That's incredible. So he sets up these speakers to play, some ambient noise, some instrumental tracks.
And, crucially, a playlist of self-help affirmations. But they were intended for himself, to listen to while he worked.
So what was on this playlist? What was the general hearing day in and day out?
It was the classics. You were born rich. Thoughts become things. Rich is not something you become, it's something you remember. All that core manifest your destiny stuff.
And here's where it gets really, really interesting. We need to get a little technical for a second. The playlist didn't just have words. It had frequencies.
Yes. Specifically, a 963 hertz frequency track, the so-called frequency of the gods.
Right. And to understand why this matters to a chicken, of all things, we have to look at the biology. The source brings up cryptochromes in their retinas.
Cryptochromes. It sounds like something out of a sci-fi novel, doesn't it?
It really does. But it's hard science.
It's very real. These are molecular structures, flavoproteins, to be specific, found in the eyes of birds. And they are exquisitely sensitive to magnetic fields.
So this is how birds navigate during migration, right?
Exactly. It's effectively how they can see or sense the magnetic lines of the Earth. It involves some pretty complex quantum entanglement effects within these molecules. They are walking biological antennas. They perceive fields that we are completely numb to.
So they are sensitive to frequencies and fields in the way a human just isn't.
In a profound way. So when the playlist introduced that specific track, the 963 hertz frequency, it wouldn't have sounded like music or a tone to the general. It would have felt like pressure, like the air was changing. It felt like tuning.
The text has that amazing image. It says the general stood on one leg. This was not rest. He was tuning. He's literally recalibrating his internal sensors to this new signal.
It's a full recalibration of his biological instrument. And then, once he's tuned to this new frequency, the words hit him, born rich.
Now, this is the critical part. The general doesn't understand wealth or accounts. He has no concept of money or banking.
None whatsoever. Those are human abstractions.
So what does he hear?
He hears two components that he does recognize mechanistically. You and born. Identity and origin. He understands the category of a subject himself and the state of his existence being born.
So he hears born rich, and he doesn't think money. He thinks, what's the chicken equivalent?
He interprets rich as a posture, a state of being. To him, rich became an internal state defined by presence, control, and the flow of resources. It's about owning space. It's about the hens differing to him. It's about the sun coming up when he says so.
So when he hears Rick is not something you become, it's something you remember, he takes that literally.
Completely literally. He interprets that as, I need to remember that I own this place. I need to remember my inherent dominance. It's not something I have to fight for every day. It's my birthright.
It bypassed interpretation and lodged as posture. That is such a powerful idea. It's like the word skipped his cognitive brain, what little there is, and went straight to his body language.
And that's often how conditioning works, even in us. You adopt the stance, the posture of confidence before you fully understand or believe the concept. For the general, the affirmation, you become what you think about, was absolutely transformative.
How so?
He thinks about the yard, he thinks about the coop, he thinks about the flock. Therefore, if thoughts become things, the yard and everything in it must belong to him by definition.
Yeah.
It's a simple, if flawed, piece of logic.
This is where we start to see the recalibration. He stops acting like a normal chicken.
Completely. Normal chickens, as the text describes, they wander, they are reactive, they chase small disputes, they're constantly scanning for threats and opportunities.
The source says, birds that hesitate do not last long. Their whole existence is reactive.
Right. But the general stops wasting energy on reaction. He stops reacting to a distant crow. He stops chasing every single hen. He moves from wandering, which is fundamentally a search for resources, to an inspection cadence.
Inspection cadence. I love that term. It sounds so corporate, so managerial.
Doesn't it? It implies he already possesses the resources. He's just auditing them now. He's conserving all his energy for governance. He's no longer a participant in the chaos. He's the auditor of the chaos.
He started treating every movement as transactional. If he moves, it has to buy him something: position, access, authority.
He stopped foraging and started patrolling. A fundamental shift in purpose.
So this new internal software starts to manifest in very real, very disruptive operational changes on the farm. And the big one, the first one that really messes with the farm system, is the time change.
The 4.0 a.m. crow.
Yes. Tell us about that.
This is a perfect example of a clash between established biological rhythms and this new imposed narrative. The playlist taught him successful people win the morning.
Which is classic self-help 101. Wake up at 4 a.m., take a cold plunge, journal, crush the day.
It is. But the general doesn't have a journal. He has his voice, so he takes it literally. He adjusts his own circadian rhythm. He starts crowing at exactly 4 a.m. every morning, like clockwork.
And the text is very careful to note, this wasn't due to the light. The sun wasn't coming up. It wasn't a response to his environment.
No, it was a declaration. It was due to a sense of ownership over time. He is declaring the start of the business day regardless of the sun.
He is seizing the temporal asset.
Oh.
He's claiming the hours before anyone else is awake. In his new mind, the day starts when he says it starts. The sun is now his subordinate.
It's an incredible power move, but it causes problems, right? Because the farm is a system, and the system has a smart coop door.
Ah, yes. The door.
The smart coop door is a rigid, automated system. It is governed by sensors and light. It opens at dawn, or in this specific January context, roughly 6:38 a.m.
But the general's awake, he's crowed, he's ready to lead his team at 4 a.m.
So you have this fundamental tension. At 4:20 a.m., the general finishes his inspection of the coop, moves to the door, and waits.
You stand there at the closed door.
And this is absolutely key to understanding his new psychology. A normal bird, faced with a closed door, might peck at it or pace around, get frustrated, and give up. The general views the closed door not as a failure or an obstacle. He sees it as a test.
A test of his resolve. A test of his manifestation powers.
He genuinely believes that if he holds his posture, if he maintains that CEO state of being, that reality will eventually have to align with his will. So he stands there, perfectly still. The hens, being chickens, are drawn to certainty, so they all gather behind him. He has an audience, and he waits.
That is dangerously confident. He's essentially trying to scare down a microchip.
It's the act-as-if principle from his playlist taken to its most logical and absurd extreme. He stands there for over 2 hours, in the dark, in the cold.
And when the door finally opens at its scheduled time,
He takes full credit for it.
of course he does.
In his mind, he didn't wait for the door. The door responded to his presence. The door opened because he stood there and willed it to. He created a clear causal narrative. I hold my posture, the system complies.
He thinks he telekinetically opened the automatic door.
Effectively, yes. And for him, this is irrefutable proof. The playlist works. I am the master of this domain. Thoughts become things.
This is a powerful, powerful delusion. And it leads us to the next phase. The vision board.
Or, as the neighbors probably saw it, a rooster scratching around in the mud. But it wasn't random scratching, was it?
Not at all. And this is where the humans, Rick and JD, start to notice that something is truly fundamentally different with this bird.
He begins scratching these specific repeated patterns in a patch of dirt near the coop. The playlist said, write it down. A goal not written is only a wish.
But he can't write. He has talons, not thumbs. He can't hold a pen.
He can't write words.
Yeah.
But he can scratch zones. He created a grid. He was externalizing his intent. This patch of dirt was no longer just dirt. It was a planning surface, a blueprint.
A map of his empire.
He mapped out territory. He designated zones for foraging, for resting. He even scratched out areas for future expansion. It was primitive, but it was organized.
The source mentions he would stand over it and tilt his head, evaluating it like a general looking at a campaign map.
He was auditing the plan. But what's truly fascinating here is the sociological aspect. how the humans reacted to it.
What did they do?
Rick, the owner, started walking around the scratch marks. He began to subconsciously defer to the zone. JD, the skeptic, noted that it created constraint in the yard.
So even though it's just lines in the dirt?
The fact that it was clearly intentional made the humans treat it as infrastructure. They started respecting the zoning laws that the chicken had created.
That is wild.
Because intent is visible and intent commands space. If you act like a piece of ground is important, if you treat it with reverence and organization, the people or creatures around you will start to assume it is important. He was literally shaping their reality by scratching mud.
Okay, so we've got the time shift, we've got the urban planning. Now we have to talk about the secret, the manifestation, specifically with the feed deliveries.
Yes, this is a classic textbook lesson in confusing correlation with causation, but on a massive agricultural scale.
So the general learned a false but very powerful lesson.
He learned the simple formula. Think about, resource about. Hold posture, resource arrives.
Because he was thinking about feed, and then, like magic, a truck full of feed would arrive.
Right. The logs show he would develop a new routine. He'd go to the feed shed. He'd verify the inventory by peering inside. He would then stand near the driveway holding his posture. And then a truck would pull up with thousands of pounds of feed.
But the truck was pulling up because Rick ordered it. It had nothing to do with the rooster.
From Rick's perspective, yes, he was just bulk buying for efficiency. But, and here is the beautiful nuance that makes his story so rich, Rick himself admitted he was buying more feed than usual.
Right.
Because he was being influenced subconsciously by the very same playlist. The affirmations are telling him money flows, abundance is your birthright, stock up. So he's filling the barns to the rafters. He's also acting as if.
No way. So Rick is buying into the abundance mindset, which physically brings the trucks to the farm.
Which, in turn, convinces the general that he is summoning the trucks with his mind. It's a perfect feedback loop, a shared delusion between man and bird, mediated by a self-help audio track.
That is unbelievable. So for the general, this hardened his delusion into absolute doctrine.
It was no longer a belief, it was a proven fact of physics. He wasn't just a bird getting fed, he was a logistics wizard, a supply chain guru manifesting resources out of thin air.
I am the provider.
Exactly. And once you believe you are the source of the food, your relationship to the rest of the flock changes completely. You aren't a member of the flock anymore. You're not even just the leader. You are their benefactor. You are the CEO.
Which brings us, naturally, to the corporate structure. Because every great CEO needs a C-suite. The general starts building his mastermind alliance.
The playlist was very clear on this. It urged him to build a mastermind alliance and develop multiple sources of income.
How does a rooster interpret sources of income?
He interpreted sources not as revenue streams, but as origins of power or force. He recognized feed, water, and authority as sources, and he realized he couldn't control them all himself. He needed leverage. He needed to delegate.
So he appoints a cabinet. Let's start with Pig.
Pig, the general's first and most important appointment. He was the CTO.
Chief Technology Officer. What technology does a pig have?
Chief Tool Officer. Pig represents raw, disruptive force. Pig digs. Pig roots. Pig can change the physical relationship to the ground itself. The general realized Pig wasn't a subordinate to be bossed around. Pig was a piece of heavy machinery.
So if you need a hole dug or a fence post undermined to test its integrity?
I get Pig. The general used Pig for creating interfaces. If he needed to access something underground like roots or buried grubs, he would position Pig there. He learned to guide the destruction to suit his construction. He aimed the chaos.
A living bulldozer. And then there's Bronchi.
Bronchi. The donkey. He becomes HR.
HR herd resources.
Herd resources. That is hilarious, but it's functionally true. What does a donkey do in HR?
I have no idea. Mediate disputes.
He absorbs tension. Bronchi's defining trait, according to the observations, is that he doesn't react. He's a massive living ballast of calm. He creates stability just by being present.
So when the hens got agitated or there was a conflict zone?
The general would use Bronchi as a damper. He would physically maneuver Bronchi into the area of conflict, and the donkey's sheer indifference would just suck the energy out of the situation. He was a gravity well of calm.
So you have the general providing the direction, Pig creating disruption and leverage, and Bronchi providing the stability.
It's a perfect triad, a three-legged stool of farm management. And the source says this system stabilized the entire farm without any formal communication. Rick just started noticing things were getting organized organically. He thought he was a genius manager,
He's taking credit for a system designed by a rooster, a pig, and a donkey.
who are all being influenced by a Bob Proctor recording. It's a management revolution.
It's amazing how effective a management team can be even if they don't speak the same language.
Or any language at all. It's about understanding and leveraging functional roles within a system. If the roles are filled correctly, the system stabilizes itself.
So the farm's running more smoothly than ever. The general has his cabinet. He's manifesting feed from the sky. But the playlist isn't done with him. It says, you are the brand. You have to monetize your gifts.
Enter the coop cams.
They farm security cameras.
Yeah.
And the general discovers the lens.
He realizes the cameras are an eye that does not blink. And for a creature whose entire worldview is now based on dominance and being seen, an unblinking eye is the ultimate audience. It's a god.
The text has this chillingly profound line. He learned that being seen felt like being real.
It's deep, isn't it? And so true for our own age. He began staging himself. He understood instinctively if the camera has a frame, he would position himself directly in the center of that frame during peak activity, like feeding time.
And this is where June, the content observer, comes in. She sees this happening.
She sees the general positioning himself perfectly for an algorithm. She sees the potential. She turns on the public live stream. And what happens?
People start watching.
Thousands of them.
But nothing is happening. It's literally just a rooster standing perfectly still while other chickens run around.
But that is the product. The viewers, in their comments, said they found the stream relaxing. The product was the order the general imposed. Amidst the visual chaos of the hens, here is this one point of absolute stillness, projecting total authority.
Stillness is a commodity, calm as a service.
The general didn't understand viewer count or subscribers, but he understood attention as a resource. He could feel it. He knew that when he stood in that spot, the energy of the world somehow was focused on him.
Monetize your gifts. He monetized his posture.
It's the influencer economy in its purest, most primitive, and maybe most honest form.
So everything is going great. The system is working. The general is a CEO. He's an influencer. He has a cabinet. But then the crisis hits. The crisis of scale.
The arrival of the Cinnies.
142 Cinnamon Queen chickens.
And this is where the story shifts from a quirky animal fable into a very sharp critique of industrial scaling. Because cinnamon queens are not like the general's heritage flock. They're not a society.
The text calls them machines.
Throughput units. They are hybrids. They are sex-linked production chickens bred for one thing and one thing only. Conversion. Feed in, eggs out, as efficiently as possible.
And they don't care about the general's carefully constructed hierarchy.
They don't care about his posture. They don't care about his crowing. The source says they flowed like a liquid around him in his cabinet.
The general tries to use his old methods, right? He crows at them, he puffs up his chest, he wears the pin.
And they completely ignore him. And this is the key. It's not out of defiance. Defiance would at least be an acknowledgement of his authority. They ignored him out of pure mechanical indifference. He was just a rock in the stream they float around.
That has to be devastating for a narcissist, for a CEO's ego.
It is. It's the fundamental clash between a biological hierarchy, where status and symbolism matter, and industrial throughput, where only efficiency matters. His symbols had no power over them.
JD, the skeptic, brings up the super chicken problem here in his notes. Can we explain that concept? It's a real thing.
It is, yeah. It's a famous experiment from an evolutionary biologist named William Muir at Purdue University. He wanted to breed a super flock of the most productive egg-laying hens.
Sounds logical. You take your best performers and breed them.
It does sound logical. So he had two groups. The control group, he just selected an average flock and let them reproduce for 6 generations. For the second group, he selected only the most productive individual hens from each generation, the super chickens, and bred them.
And what happened?
After 6 generations, the average flock was doing great. They were plump, healthy, and their egg production had increased dramatically. The super chicken flock, well, all but 3 of them were dead.
What? Why?
They had pecked the others to death. The high performers, the super chickens, had achieved their productivity by suppressing the others. They were bullies. And when you put all the bullies in one room, they just destroy the system and each other.
And the Cinnies, these 142 new arrivals, they were all super chickens.
They were a flock of top performers. And they were doing exactly what the experiment predicted, stripping the system bare. Efficiency was eating the farm. They were turning the pasture into mud.
But here's the general's delusion kicking in again. He saw this rapid consumption not as a disaster.
He interpreted it as conquest.
He thought they were his army, rapidly consuming enemy territory.
He thought, look at my troops, look how fast we are consuming the world. He tried to take credit for their destruction. He stood on the fence posts and crowed louder than ever, as if he were directing this incredible new wave of productivity.
But the system was becoming too heavy for symbolic leadership.
Precisely. His symbols couldn't hold back the physical reality of 142 eating machines. Symbols don't eat grass, mouths do. The narrative was cracking under the weight of the reality.
So the system itself starts to fail. The fences start to lean.
This is where JD has that great insight in his log. He says, the fence isn't just wire, the fence learns.
That's a creepy phrase. The fence learns.
What he means is that the fence learns where the pressure is. As the Cinnies, this liquid mass of birds, crowded certain areas, the fence bowed. The staples loosened, the wire stretched. The physical boundary of the farm was failing under the immense pressure of this new, scaled-up population.
So Rick, seeing this disaster unfolding, introduces rotational grazing.
A standard, sensible management technique. You use temporary fencing to move the animals to fresh ground, to let the old ground recover. It's a desperate attempt to manage the load.
But the general, he didn't see it that way. He didn't see it as saving the grass.
Of course not. From his perspective, every time Rick put up a new temporary fence, it wasn't a management tactic.
It was expanding the territory.
Exactly. Each new paddock was a new annexation. He treated every new fence line as a stage for inspection, a new conquest to survey. He was the emperor of a constantly growing empire.
So Rick is in damage control, trying to save the farm from collapsing, and the general thinks they're successfully invading Poland.
That's a perfect summary, and this highlights that growing tension between the temporary fence, which flexes and moves and represents his expanding domain, and the permanent fence, the actual legal boundary of the farm.
And the general started staring at the unknown land beyond the permanent
That's
fence.
the neighbor's land.
It was the next logical step. If limitations are learned, as the playlist keeps telling him, then why does the farm stop here? Why this arbitrary line?
He's eyeing the horizon, planning his next acquisition, and then, at the peak of this delusion, he gets his crown.
The big chief pin.
This is the moment the narrative fully solidifies and becomes, in a way, real. Pig, the chief tool officer, unearths an old chipped enamel pin while he's rooting. It's from an old brand of feed, and it says, Big Chief.
And Rick, the enabler, just thinking it's funny,
He picks it up, cleans it off, and pins it to the general's saddle feathers. He jokes. That suits you. But for the general, this was not a joke. This was his coronation.
the source material makes a really interesting point about the physical effect of the pin. It mentions asymmetry and secondary motion. What does that mean?
That's crucial. The pin was off-center. It created an asymmetry on his body, and when he walked, the pin would swing and catch the light. It created a flash of motion that wasn't part of his natural body.
It externalized his authority.
Perfectly put. Before, he had to be in a spot to command it. He had to hold the posture. Now the authority traveled with him, embodied in the shiny, moving object. He was literally wearing his status.
The text says he started sleeping standing up to guard the pin.
It formalized his self-concept. He wasn't just acting like a CEO anymore. He was the big chief. The symbol and the reality had merged.
So now the farm is completely fractured. It exists as two separate, overlapping realities.
Exactly. On one side, you have the symbolic reality. The general, his cabinet, the pin, the narrative of the CEO who manifests abundance and conquers new territory. It's a story.
And on the other side,
You have the mechanical reality. The Cinnies stripping the land bare, the feed bills piling up, the fences bowing under pressure, the soil degrading. It's physics.
and Rick and JD are stuck right in the middle of this collision.
Trying to manage the very real, very expensive consequences of a rooster who believes he is a titan of industry and a flock of biological machines that are eating them out of house and home.
Which brings us to the outro, the final image from this deep dive. The general, standing at the fence line.
Pin glinting in the weak winter sun, looking at the neighbor's land. And you just know what he's thinking.
He's convinced by the playlist that limitations are learned and that he must act as if the position is already yours, the position of owning that next field.
And this is the great irony. He was completely wrong about the mechanism. He didn't manifest the feed with his mind. He didn't will the door to open. But he was, in a way, right about the result.
The farm did grow, at least in population. More feed did arrive. He did become an online star. The narrative, however flawed its logic, managed to ride the wave of the underlying reality Rick was creating.
Which really makes you think about the power and the danger of that phrase, act as if.
It does. It raises that final, provocative thought for all of us. What happens when you act as if you are a titan, but you are part of a system that can't actually support that delusion indefinitely?
The general believes he is the driver of this massive expanding truck, but he might just be the hood ornament on a runaway vehicle of industrial efficiency that's headed for a cliff.
He's the logo on the grill of a semi-truck that has lost its brakes.
And he thinks the wind in his face is proof of his own incredible speed.
Wow, that is both terrifying and hilarious.
It might be the story of modern leadership in a nutshell.
Well, on that slightly unsettling note, we're going to wrap up this deep dive into the mind of a bird who decided to stop relying on luck and start relying on corporate policy.
A fascinating trip. It was a pleasure.
Thanks for listening. Okay, let's unpack this. We are back. We are absolutely returning to Ashley County because, frankly, I haven't been able to stop thinking about this since we finished recording part 1.
It really gets under your skin, doesn't it?
It does.
It's one of those files that, when you just say the summary out loud, it sounds like a joke. A rooster thinks he's a CEO.
Right. It sounds like a cartoon.
But then you get into the actual documentation, the logs, the observations, and it feels like this incredibly profound commentary on, well, everything. Management, belief, systems, collapse.
Exactly. So for anyone just tuning in, and if you are, seriously, you should hit pause, go back and listen to part 1, because this is going to sound like a complete fever dream otherwise.
You really need the context for this one.
You do. We are diving deep into the second half of this document, The General Grows the Farm, by K. Brad Barfield.
A work of, and I love this classification, absurd realism.
Which is the only possible way to describe it. So, just to do the quickest recap of the insanity. We have a rooster, a pretty standard barnyard bird, who was accidentally exposed to a 2047 loop of self-help audio.
And we're talking the classics. Bob Proctor, Jack Canfield.
The secret ecosystem.
Yeah.
Abundance mindsets, manifestation loops, all of it.
Right. And instead of just, tuning it out as background noise, this rooster, who we call the General, he internalized it.
He really did. He started to believe, and I mean literally believe, that he was a CEO manifesting reality through posture and flow.
He even formed a corporate cabinet. I still can't get over that part.
It's incredible. He recruits Pig as his CTO, Chief Tool Officer, because Pig digs things up.
And Bronchi the donkey becomes his HR representative.
Because Bronchi just sort of absorbs emotional volatility. He just stands there.
He's a stabilizing presence. So what we saw in part 1 was really the rise. We saw the formation of a delusion that weirdly seemed to be working.
It did. The General found this vintage Big Chief pin. He wore it. He strutted for the security cameras, and the algorithm on the live stream rewarded him. The farm expanded, resources flowed in.
And in his mind, he was doing it all with his thoughts. He was bending the universe to his will.
But today, we are looking at the other side of that coin.
Yeah.
The bill comes due.
It does, because the theme of this whole second half of the deep dive is, it's very simple, but it's very harsh. Physics always wins.
Ooh, ominous, but true.
It is. I mean, systems that run on pure delusion, it doesn't matter how positive or, high vibration that delusion is, they eventually hit physical limits.
You can't manifest your way out of everything.
You can't. Eventually you run out of grass. Eventually you run out of money. Eventually you just run out of belief.
So today we're tracking that whole crisis.
Yeah.
We're going to talk about something called the super chicken crisis, which is just an incredible phrase that I cannot wait to get into.
Oh, it's a real thing. It's fascinating.
And we're going to cover the intervention where the mechanic, JD, who's sort of the voice of reality in this whole saga, he basically pulls the emergency brake on the whole operation.
And from there, we'll get into the death of the figurehead, what happens when the CEO finally falls, and maybe more importantly, why the system didn't collapse the way everyone, including the General, thought it would.
And finally, this concept that you flagged, which I think is my favorite part of the entire text, the land writes back.
It's the most profound part, I think. It's where the story pivots from being this, weird business fable to something almost ecological, almost spiritual in a very grounded way. It's the shift from storytelling to maintenance.
And that distinction between telling a story about a farm and actually maintaining a farm,
Yeah.
that's the heart of this entire file, isn't it?
It is. It's everything.
Okay, so let's jump right back in. Where we left off, the general is at the absolute peak of his power. He's got the pin, the cabinet, the camera time, the stream is viral, he's the king. But then a truck arrives, and it brings something that completely changes the math on the farm.
The Cinnies.
The Cinnies, 142 cinnamon queen hens. Now, I'm not a chicken expert, I'm really not, but the source text makes a very, very specific distinction here. These aren't just more chickens, are they?
No, not at all. And this is absolutely crucial to understanding the conflict that drives this entire second act. You have to understand, the general is a heritage bird. He's old world. He has instincts related to pecking order, dominance, social structure.
Okay.
The cinnamon queen is not a heritage bird, it's a hybrid. It's an industrial solution to a production problem.
A solution. What's the problem it's solving?
The problem is, how do we get the most eggs for the least amount of feed and fuss? The text describes them not as livestock, but as throughput units.
Throughput units, that feels so cold. It's like something you'd read in a factory manual, not a farm diary.
It is cold, but it's brutally accurate to their design. These birds are what's known as sex-linked hybrids. They're optimized for one thing and one thing only: converting feed into eggs with maximum efficiency and minimal personality.
Minimal personality.
They're bred to be docile, uniform, they're relentless eaters. They are, for all intents and purposes, biological machines designed for output.
And this creates an immediate culture clash on the farm.
Oh, a massive one. Think about the general's entire worldview. It's all based on a model of scarcity and hierarchy.
What do you mean by that?
His whole identity is built on being the one who controls access to resources. He stands in the right place, he puffs his chest, he wears the pin, he directs traffic. He believes his leadership is what makes the farm work. He thinks he's the gatekeeper of abundance.
He thinks he's the reason the sun comes up and the feed appears in the trough.
Exactly. But the Cinnies, they operate on a completely different model. An abundance and efficiency model. They don't care about hierarchy. They don't understand social structures. They care about flow. They don't get the concept of waiting for permission.
And sources, they just ignored him.
They did. And not out of disrespect, which is what drove the general crazy. If they had challenged him, if another rooster had shown up and tried to fight him, he would have known exactly what to do. He understands conflict.
Right, that's his world.
But the Cinnies just flowed around him. He would stand in a gateway, trying to inspect them, to assert his authority, and they would just act like water moving around a rock.
So he sees it as insubordination, but they're just operating according to their programming.
Their programming is to convert input to output. They are not programmed to respect a rooster's ego.
There's this one great observation in the text where the general is trying to manage them with symbolism. He's standing there, puffed up, wearing his big chief pin, holding his CEO posture. And in the background, the Cinnies are just systematically stripping the land bare. He's posing for a camera that isn't on, and they're just eating everything.
It's the perfect metaphor for a certain kind of management crisis, isn't it? You have the leader who's totally invested in vision and culture and mission statements.
Their narrative.
The narrative.
Yeah.
And then you have the workforce, which is just pure, raw productivity that operates completely outside of that story. And this is what leads us directly to the super chicken problem.
Yeah, JD the Mechanic, our voice of gritty reality, he explicitly references the super chicken experiment. I actually looked this up because I thought it was a joke from the author, but it's a real thing, isn't it?
It is very real. It refers to a study by an evolutionary biologist at Purdue University, a guy named William Muir. The idea was to try and breed a flock of only the most productive hens, the super chickens.
Okay, that makes sense on paper. You take your best layers,
Yeah.
your top performers, put them all together, and you'll get a super flock that outperforms everyone else.
Yeah.
It's the A-team logic.
It is. It's exactly the A-team logic. But that's not what happened. What Muir found was that the super chickens were super productive as individuals because they were hyper-competitive and aggressive. They achieved their productivity by suppressing the productivity of others.
Oh.
So when he put them all together in one super flock, they pecked each other to death. Yeah. After a year, only 3 birds had survived. The productivity of the individual came at the direct expense of the system. Meanwhile, the control group, the average normal flock, was thriving and laying tons of eggs.
Wow. So the Cinnies, they're super chickens in that sense.
They are, but with a twist. In our case, they aren't fighting each other. They're too docile for that. They're fighting the land. Their individual productivity is so high that it's stripping the system of its resources. They are extracting value faster than the environment can possibly replace it.
The source describes the land actually changing. It says the pasture changes texture. Green turns to compacted earth.
That's the tragedy of the commons setting in. It's a classic concept from economics and ecology. When you have a shared resource, in this case the pasture, and you have individual agents, the Cinnies, who are incentivized to maximize their own consumption.
They'll just deplete the resource until it collapses.
Right, and it's not because they're evil, it's just because the system is designed that way. The grass stops recovering.
Why, though? Just because they eat it too fast.
It's more than that. They eat the grass down to the crown so it can't regrow. Then they start scratching and eating the roots. And because there are so many of them, their weight and activity compacts the soil, so nothing new can grow back even if it wanted to.
And the general,
Yeah.
he doesn't see this as a problem at all.
No, he thinks it's success. He sees all this activity, all this dust flying, all these chickens moving, and he thinks, look at us go. Look at this momentum. This is hustle.
He's mistaking chaos for productivity.
He's mistaking extraction for growth. And this is where the delusion really, really escalates. I mean, the land is literally dying under his feet, turning to dirt.
And so he goes to his dirt patch.
He goes to his vision board, scratched in the dirt.
It's such a poignant, almost tragic image. You have this rooster in the middle of a dying field, scratching a grid into a patch of bare earth near the coop.
And he's expanding the grid, he's scratching new lines, pushing them out toward the fence. In his mind, he's an architect, he's a strategic planner, mapping out the next phase of expansion.
But in reality, what is he actually doing?
He is just scratching dirt while the land dies. That's it. He's completely mistaking the map for the territory. He believes that if he draws the plan for expansion, reality will be forced to catch up.
And the tragedy is, the humans are enabling him. We have to talk about Rick, the farmer.
Rick is the ultimate enabler here. He's trapped in the same feedback loop. He sees the egg numbers shooting up because the Cinnies are absolute laying machines. And he sees the general acting confident and strutting around.
So he thinks it's working.
He thinks it's working. So what does he do? He goes out and buys more feed. He buys more fencing to accommodate the expansion that the general is planning.
He's feeding the feedback loop. He's financing the delusion.
Exactly. He's looking at the general's confidence and the Cinnies' output, and he's telling himself, this is growth. This is a sound investment. He's completely ignoring the cost, the degradation of the underlying asset, the land itself.
The source has this just brutal line. The tragedy of the commons does not announce itself as failure. It announces itself as success that continues past sustainability.
Oof. Yeah, that line hits hard.
It really does. Success that continues past sustainability.
It's so profound. I mean, think about it in any context. In the early stages of a bubble or a resource collapse, everything looks fantastic. Output is at an all-time high. Everyone is busy. The stock price is soaring.
The general is crowing. The Cinnies are laying.
But the underlying asset, the soil, the belief, the energy, the cash reserves, is being hollowed out. They're spending the principal, not just the interest. And they're calling it profit.
And the general, he interprets the chaos of the Cinnies, the dust, the stripping of the land, not as a warning sign, but as a signal that the system needs more of him.
Yes, that's the core of the delusion. He thinks, oh, there's friction here, there's chaos. That must mean I need to manage hard. I need to be more of a CEO.
So he doubles down.
He doubles down. He increases his patrols. He crows more. He tries to intercept the hens and, give them directives. But he's applying a social solution to a physical problem.
Explain that distinction. A social solution versus a physical problem.
Well, a social solution is like giving a speech or calling a meeting or designing a new logo. It relies on influence, on narrative, on belief. A physical problem is there is no more grass.
Right.
You can't manage a flock that is stripping the land by standing taller or wearing a shinier pin. Physics doesn't care about your posture. You can't motivate grass to grow if the roots have been eaten and the soil is like concrete.
It's like trying to stop a flood by giving a motivational speech to the water.
Precisely. And this is where we finally hit the breaking point. The system is overheating. Rick is stressed out, buying feed he can't afford, chasing an expansion he can't possibly manage. The general is exhausted from trying to govern these ungovernable units. The land is turning to dust.
Enter JD.
Enter JD, the realist.
I love JD. He's the character who just walks in, looks at the whole mess, and just tells the unvarnished truth.
He's the mechanic, right?
He's the mechanic. He understands leverage, load, fatigue, stress points. And in Section 2, the intervention, JD arrives, but he doesn't come with tools to fix a fence. He comes with an observation. He counts the intervals, right? That's what the text says.
He counts the intervals of pressure. He watches how fast the hens can strip a new patch of ground. He watches how frantic Rick is running around. And he delivers this incredible diagnosis. He tells Rick he is overdrawn on belief.
Overdrawn on belief. That is such a good way to put it.
It's an amazing phrase. It means the system is no longer running on actual value. It's running on the justification of the next step. Every egg that gets laid becomes an excuse to buy more feed. Every problem that crops up becomes an excuse to expand.
It's a Ponzi scheme of energy.
That's exactly what it is. Rick is borrowing energy from tomorrow to pay for today's feed bill, and he's calling it growth.
So JD decides to pull the hard brake. And he doesn't ask for permission, does he?
No, you can't. You can't ask a delusion for permission to stop it. A delusion will always argue for its own continuation. It will always say, just one more week, just one more investment. We're about to turn the corner.
So he just does it. He executes a physical reset.
Yes. And the steps of this reset are really specific. It feels like a checklist for deprogramming a cult or something.
Okay, let's walk through them. Step 1, he shuts off the sound.
He physically walks over to the speakers and powers them down, kills the playlist. The infrastructure of affirmation, as the text calls it, is removed.
No more Bob Proctor telling the general he was born rich.
No more 963 hertz frequency loops for manifesting abundance. Just silence. The actual ambient sound of a stressed out farm.
Okay, step 2, he locks the rotation gates.
He stops the expansion dead in its tracks. He locks the birds into a smaller, contained area to stop the rapid consumption cycle. He forces the system to actually face its own density. He stops them from being able to just run away to the next patch of green.
And step 3, he unplugs the camera.
Or at least a peripheral one. He degrades the surveillance. He reduces the audience. He stops the performance.
And the general. He does not take this well.
No, he does not. This is really the climax of the general's entire arc. He confronts JD. He walks right up to him. He's got the pin on. He's got the posture. And he crows directly at him.
He tries to use his voice, his primary tool of power.
He tries to use the tool that has always worked for him. He assumes that his authority is intrinsic, that it comes from him. He assumes that when he speaks, the world rearranges itself to his will, but the speakers are off. The echo is gone.
And JD's reaction is just, it's so cold.
It's clinical. The text says JD laughs, and then he says the line, "You're not wrong, you're just not in charge."
That chills me. You're not wrong, you're just not in charge.
It's the ultimate reality check. It perfectly separates the narrative from the physics. The general's narrative was that he was the CEO. JD's physics says he's a rooster in a yard that has run out of money and grass. The general can crow all he wants, but JD has the keys to the gate and the power switch.
And the general realizes it in that moment, doesn't he?
He does. The source describes this resistance phase immediately after. The whole system starts to glitch. The Cinnies reach a locked gate and they don't know what to do. They experience what the text calls idle density. They just pile up, confused. And the general tries to crow at the powered down speaker. He actually goes over and pecks it.
He's troubleshooting. He's like, is this thing on?
Like, it's almost pathetic in the classical sense of the word. It evokes pity. He's realizing in real time that his power wasn't coming from inside him. It was coming from the amplification. Without the audio reinforcement, without the echo, his authority doesn't travel. His crow hits the air and just dies.
He realizes his power was completely artificial.
That has to be a devastating moment for a rooster, or for a CEO, or for anyone who realizes their influence was based on a technology they don't control.
It's the collapse of the ego. It's the moment you realize you aren't the protagonist of the story, you're just a character in it.
And Rick feels it too. Rick feels the hollow silence in the yard, and he wants to fix it. His first instinct is to go turn the speakers back on because the silence is uncomfortable. It forces him to look at the muddy ground and the stack of bills.
The noise was a distraction.
Of course. But JD warns him. He gives him that choice. You can rebuild this slow, or you can chase the old feeling until it breaks.
And that's the choice, isn't it? Maintenance or destruction.
You can sit in the discomfort and allow things to heal, or you can turn the noise back on and drive the whole car right off the cliff.
So they choose maintenance, or rather, JD forces maintenance upon them, and this leads directly to the pivot. Section 3, from content to context.
Right, and this is where June, the media manager, steps back into this story.
June is such a fascinating character because she's so cynical, but also so effective. She sees the metrics on the live stream flattening. The viral energy is gone because the drama of the expansion has stopped. The general isn't doing his crazy CEO stuff anymore.
A normal person might try to hype it up to create some new drama.
But she doesn't do that. She leans into the crash.
She rebrands.
Completely. She changes the stream title. It goes from whatever clickbait title it had before, CEO Rooster Built Empire, to something simple. Unedited farm audio. No guarantees.
No guarantees. That's basically anti-marketing.
It's brilliant, though.
Yeah.
It reframes the entire expectation. It takes the stream from being content, which implies action, a plot, the general doing things, and turns it into context.
Ambient utility, background noise.
It becomes a sleep aid.
Exactly. And the algorithm, capital A, responds to this. We often think of the algorithm as this chaotic beast, but really, it just wants to match viewers to retention. It wants to give people what they'll keep watching or listening to.
So it stops treating the farm as viral entertainment.
And it starts categorizing it as utility. It starts pushing the stream to people who are searching for, calming sounds, nature audio, sounds to sleep to.
So the audience changes. People stop logging on and asking, where is the boss? What's the general doing?
And they start just using the stream to chill out, to fall asleep. And this is the final public demotion of the general. He loses the mic.
June adjusts the audio gate so that when he crows, it doesn't spike the levels anymore.
Can you explain the audio gate for people who don't know the tech?
Yeah, it's basically a limiter on the sound. If a sound is too loud, like a rooster crowing right into a sensitive microphone, the system automatically squashes it down so it doesn't startle the listeners or wake them up.
So he's still crowing.
He's still crowing, but he's been mixed down into the background. He's just part of the texture now, along with the wind and the sounds of the hens.
He's no longer the protagonist. He's just part of the setting.
And this is where we see the end of the Big Chief pin. The source says the pin stops swinging because the general stops posturing so much. It gets covered in dust. It becomes dull.
Objects lose power when the system stops responding to them.
That's the key insight right there. The pin was only powerful because everyone, the other animals, Rick, the camera, all treated it like a badge of office. Once the camera stops zooming in on it, and the hens ignore it, and the audio stops amplifying his crows.
It's just a piece of cheap metal on a bird. It's not a symbol anymore.
This is the quiet phase. The source says the yard starts to organize around natural gradients, shade and light, wet and dry, rather than the commands of a leader.
It's a return to biology, a return to physics. The system is healing itself. It's boring, but it's healing. And the quote that sums it all up is, reframing works because it did not argue with the past. It simply refused to continue it.
They didn't have a big meeting and announce, the general is fired.
No, they just stopped pointing the camera at him. They just turned down his mic. They removed the attention. And without the fuel of attention, the delusion just starved.
Which brings us to the inevitable conclusion of his arc. Section 4, the death of the figurehead.
Yeah, we all knew this was coming. It had to.
In chapter 28 of the source text, the general passes away, and it's so weirdly anticlimactic.
It had to be anticlimactic. If he had died in a heroic battle with Coyote or in some dramatic final crow at sunset, it would have validated his myth. It would have made him a martyr.
He would have kept this story alive.
But the source is very clear. He simply failed to rise. Rick goes out one morning and finds him under the tree line.
And this is it. This is the most critical takeaway from the entire saga, the reaction of the system.
Or, more accurately, the complete lack of a reaction.
Right. The Cinnies do not panic.
Yeah.
The corporate cabinet doesn't fall apart. The hierarchy does not collapse. The sun comes up. The feed arrives. The eggs are laid. Nothing changes.
Why? I mean, in his head, he was the CEO. He was Atlas holding up the entire world.
Because he wasn't really the CEO. He was the figurehead. The actual system, the Cinnies, the feed delivery schedule, the fences, the waterers. It was all redundancy heavy. The general thought the farm was a pyramid with him at the very top. But the farm was actually a field. It was a network.
The system absorbs the absence.
It just flows into the empty space. Pressure moves where it's needed. Relief follows. It turns out the farm didn't need a vision board and a charismatic leader. It just needed to function.
And Rick's reaction here is so important too. He buries the general, but he does it without a marker.
He avoids creating a shrine.
Exactly. He knows that if he puts up a little cross or a stone, it starts a new narrative. Here lies the founder. And he's done with narratives. He doesn't want to create a pilgrimage site for fans of the stream.
He also removes the big chief pin and just puts it in a shed. And there's that quote, "Objects that once mattered should be allowed to stop mattering."
I love that line so much. We have such a tendency to hoard the artifacts of our past phases, our past identities. We keep the old badges, the awards, the tools we don't use anymore. Rick just puts it in a box. It's over.
And the stream. What happens on the stream?
The stream runs that afternoon, and no one notices he's gone. The farm outlives the story. Immediately.
That is just brutal, but also
Okay.
kind of comforting. Like, the world keeps turning. Life goes on.
It is comforting. It means the system was robust. If the farm had collapsed the second he died, it would have meant the whole thing was fragile and weak. The fact that it didn't even notice means it was strong.
So the king is dead. Long live the land.
Exactly. Which brings us to Section 5. The land writes back.
This is the part that feels almost spiritual to me,
Okay.
but in a very grounded, physical way.
It's ecological communication. That's the best way I can describe it. The premise of this section is that the land doesn't speak in words or sentences. It speaks in delays.
Give me an example of the land writing back. What does that actually look like on the farm?
Okay, so take water drainage. When the general was pushing the expansion and the Cinnies were compacting the soil, water would hit the ground and just run off immediately. It created erosion. That instant runoff was a message from the land. It was saying, I cannot hold this. I am rejecting this.
Okay.
Now, in the quiet phase, Rick notices that when it rains, the water stays. It absorbs into the ground.
The delay.
The delay, the time between the rain falling and the water disappearing into the soil, that absorption is the land writing back saying, I am healing, I am becoming porous again, I can accept this now.
And the grass does the same thing.
The grass returns, but in patches. And interestingly, the text notes that it favors the edges of the pasture first. It grows back in the places where the pressure was removed first. It's not a uniform green carpet like a golf course.
It's patchy. It's honest.
It's recovering at its own pace, not at the pace of some business plan. It's showing its own history.
And Pig. We haven't mentioned Pig the CTO in a while.
Pig. The source mentions that a muddy channel that Pig had dug during the chaotic phase, which was causing erosion, eventually stabilizes. The grass grows around it, and it becomes a functional drainage ditch. The land accepted Pig's chaotic digging and repurposed it into useful infrastructure.
This is what shifts Rick's mindset completely. He goes from that abundance mindset, forcing growth, manifesting results, to a maintenance mindset.
He stops reading the self-help books and he starts reading the mud. He stops counting seasons as Q1, Q2, Q3, and just starts seeing time as layered, as cyclical.
And the expanded acreage, that big plot of land he bought during the peak of the delusion, it stops being a project.
It just becomes ground to walk on. It's no longer the future expansion, it's just the earth. He stops projecting his ego and his ambitions onto the land.
JD has a final assessment here that's just perfect. You touched it too hard, then you stopped. Now it's telling you where it still hurts.
That's the accountability right there. The land remembers the abuse. It writes back by showing you the scars, the bare patches, the erosion lines, and you don't get to just landscape them away instantly. You just have to live with them and watch the grass slowly grow back.
So we're in the aftermath now, Section 6, myth versus reality. Because even though the general is gone and the farm is quiet and healing, the internet never really forgets, does it?
The decay of myths. This part is so fascinating and so true to life. You see it in the comment section of the live stream. People who watch the old seasons, so to speak, they still pop in and comment things like, he was the founder, or he manifested all of this.
They're still clinging to the story.
They are. But the truth is, the farm doesn't remember the general. It responds only to what touches it next. If a fox comes by, the farm responds to the fox. It doesn't sit there and ask, what would the general do?
And there's that one scene where outsiders, fans of the old stream, actually come to visit the farm.
Yeah, they arrive expecting to see the manifestation farm. They want to see the magic. They want a tour of the corporate cabinet's offices.
What do they find?
A boring, functional place, a muddy yard, some chickens eating feed, a fence that needs mending. They leave disappointed.
Because they wanted the movie, but they found the reality.
Exactly. And this leads to Rick's final temptation. He sees their disappointment. He knows he could do it again. He could turn the speakers back on. He could find a new charismatic rooster, put the big chief pin on him, and restart the whole playlist.
Restarting feels like control.
But it's just noise with memory. That's the line. He finally realizes that turning the sound back on isn't a plan, it's just a comfort blanket. It's nostalgia for a feeling that almost destroyed him. So he deletes the playlist from his phone.
He deletes it. Finality.
No further instructions.
And that brings us to the conclusion, the title of the last section, No Further Instructions.
It's the final state of the farm. It functions without a checklist. There's no 5-year plan. There's no manual anymore.
JB says it perfectly. No more leverage points, no more accelerants. If you change something now, it's just preference.
That implies a level of stability that is so rare. Most of us, in our lives and our work, are constantly looking for the next lever, the next hack, the next accelerant. We want to 10x our lives. JD is saying, you're done. It works. Anything else you do is just because you feel like it, not because you have to.
And the final lesson of the whole text. Stories decay faster than farms.
The narrative was an overlay. It was a sticker that was put on top of reality. And once that sticker peeled off, the durable, inefficient, real farm remained underneath.
So in the end, the general became what he thought about.
But the farm became what the land allowed.
That is the crucial distinction. The general lived in his head, in the story. The farm lived in the dirt. And at the end of the day, the dirt wins.
Statistics always wins.
What a journey. From a rooster listening to Bob Proctor in a barn to a quiet patch of land slowly healing itself.
It's such a complete arc, and it's a warning, really, about the danger of mistaking our stories for reality. We all have a playlist running in our heads, don't we? I'm a CEO, I'm a creative, I'm a victim, I'm destined for this.
And sometimes that playlist is useful. It helps us get out of bed in the morning.
Of course. But if you let that playlist drown out the actual feedback from the world, if you ignore the fact that you're running out of money or energy or friends or grass, you end up having to hit the brake hard. Or worse, someone else has to hit it for you.
So the challenge, I guess, for anyone listening today is pretty clear. Where in your own life are you mistaking a playlist for a plan?
Where are you forcing abundance when you really should be in maintenance mode? Where are you out there scratching a grid in the dirt while the actual grass is dying right behind you?
And maybe, just maybe, it's time to unplug the speaker for a little while and just see what the silence sounds
It
like.
might feel hollow at first, uncomfortable, but at least it's real.
On that note, we're going to let you get back to your own maintenance. Thanks for diving deep with us into the saga of the General.
See you next time.